got Maria Helling, the CEO of Swecare Foundation. Maria, please do join us. And of course, your panelists too. Please, warm welcome. Maria, it's a really pleasure to have you back at India Unlimited, India-Sweden Innovation Day. I remember 2014, we kicked off, and in 2015, we've been talking about health for quite a few years. And I think this will be really interesting to hear it under the umbrella of the India-Sweden Health and Life Science collaboration. One of the most important collaborations and MOUs between Sweden and India, which has been very, very successful. I leave it over to you, Maria. Warm welcome.
Thank you, Sanjo.
Please
what a nice introduction.
Yeah.
Well, we start then. Yes, thank you very much for those words. And a warm welcome to all of you who are listening and watching out there. This will be the Health and Life Science panel. And we will focus on how the pandemic has been a drive or a catalyst for innovation. My name is Maria Helling. I am the CEO of Swecare Foundation, and that is a semi-governmental organization under the Swedish Ministry of Health and Social Affairs. We work to help and support the Swedish life science sector in their internationalization efforts. We have been active in working with India for quite a long time, as Sanjo mentioned. In 2009, it was a memorandum of understanding in the area of public health and healthcare was signed between the governments of Sweden and India. And since then, we have been very active, taking part in a joint working group meeting every year to try to implement this MOU. And we have arranged a lot of outgoing delegations to India and also received, of course, visits here in Sweden and have many different activities around this. It's my great pleasure to be here today again. As Sanjo said, we've been present at this event during most of the times it has been arranged, I believe. So it's an important occasion to be able to discuss and take this area further. Well, we have a fantastic panel with us today with different representatives of the healthcare sector, you could say. Some of them from Sweden, some from India. One is here with me in the studio. And I will start with letting them introduce themselves. I believe that we have Niclas Jacobson, Head of International Affairs at the Swedish Ministry of Health and Social Affairs, with us. And I would like Niclas to start with an introduction of himself, of course, and maybe say a few words, give a background to the India-Swedish relations in this field. Please, Niclas.
Thank you very much, Maria. And good evening and good afternoon to all of you, whoever is listening and wherever you are. As Maria said, I'm heading the international division in the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs. And I've had the pleasure to be part of the Swedish-India health collaboration for a long time. And the last 9 years, I've been co-chairing the joint working group together with my Indian counterparts. Sweden, as Maria said, Sweden and India have a strong and multifaceted collaboration in many sectors. But in the healthcare sector, the basis is a memorandum of understanding that was in healthcare and public health that was signed 2009. And last year we had the 10-year celebration, which we called we were celebrating the whole year, and we called it the India-Sweden Year of Health. And there was several different activities going on. I can just mention that we had a ministerial visit for 1 week with our Minister of Health to Delhi and to Rajasthan, Jodhpur. And in the end of the year, we had the main happening and celebration where we had the state visit by the King and Queen of Sweden. And in an event with this Indian Minister of Health, we had this 10-year celebration, which was very, very nice. I would like to emphasize the importance of the long-term commitment of this collaboration, because under the umbrella of the MOU, very many different organizations and actors have been active in a number of different thematic areas for many years. And these established contacts has meant that, for instance, now during the pandemic, there is already, I would say, friendships and contacts that has meant that it has been possible to keep on this good collaboration even in these very difficult and dire times. And I think that is a really something that is not easy if you haven't this long-term commitment. One important factor for the success of this collaboration is indeed the construction of the MOU, where we have both the public and the private sector, as well as the academia, being part of it. And through this triple helix approach, we encourage collaboration not only between countries, but also between these different actors and agencies and companies. And we can see that over the years, the research collaboration has flourished. Policy change between the governmental agencies has been initiated and developed, and the trade relations in the life science sector has increased manifold. I would just turn to one of our common global challenges, which is the digital transformation of our health systems and the use of trying to optimize the use of technology. And it is my firm belief that the healthcare of the future must be digital and accessible. And this is something that we will achieve by enhancing innovation and research collaboration and of course co-creations across country and sector borders. And we have learned during the years that there is so much know-how and so much interest and experiences in India for us to learn in Sweden. The MOU and the action plan connected to that and the innovation partnership are a testament to how our relations have developed and deepened. And I'm certain that we have much to learn from each other's knowledge and experiences. So not least from this ongoing pandemic in the years to come. So thank you very much for letting me be part of this seminar today. Thank you.
Niclas, for that introduction to, set the scene a little bit to today's discussion. We continue with Amrit Hinduja, a representative of Business Sweden, based in Bangalore. Please, Amrit, if you could briefly introduce yourself and just name a few things around what you feel are the main challenges for this sector today during the pandemic.
Thanks, Maria. Great to be here. My name's Amrit, heading the Business Sweden operations in Bangalore in South India, as well as leading the healthcare vertical and co-lead of the India-Sweden Innovation Center. I think while the pandemic quite early started to kind of pose many challenges or dire situations, as Niclas was mentioning, I think we at Business Sweden were quite active both to monitor the situation across sectors, but also kind of helping healthcare companies overcome these and also kind of link them to these government quick businesses and emergency requirements that came in. And I think quite soon one realized that you could start looking at these challenges more as opportunities. And I think it started to change many ways in which healthcare started to be delivered in a country like India. And it didn't kind of create anything new, I would say, but it started accelerating things which were much needed. For example, the entire need for digital and kind of the teleconsulting. Traditionally, the Indian healthcare system has had a low doctor-patient ratio, which the government is working to increase. We've had overburdened tertiary sector within healthcare delivery. And I think this pandemic put patients in a very different situation, where they started recognizing when they really needed to visit the hospital, when they could care for themselves, and vice versa. The hospitals also started working with engaging with patients remotely. We saw this with our work with AIIMS Jodhpur, who initially started using things like WhatsApp to communicate with patients and only bringing patients in who really need to come, but soon also quickly maturing into chatbots and other very interesting features. We also noticed Swedish companies like Doc Online could capitalize such kind of remote opportunities, both giving them pressure, but also giving them growth in their teleconsulting business. And I think this is an interesting kind of change we see the pandemic has brought about, kind of bringing the entire patient in the center, because that's where hospitals have started rethinking. And I think this will be an important trend where in the coming future, which the pandemic has kind of supported to push ahead. In addition, of course, to the entire trend of digital and patient centricity. And I think innovations will kind of play a key role to kind of drive these two trends in a country like India.
Thank you, Amrit. Very interesting to hear. We move over to Cecilia Edström, CEO of Bactiguard, who is with me here actually in Stockholm in the studio. Nice to have someone physically attending this. Please, Cecilia, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how Bactiguard has worked and responded to the pandemic.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, I will, with pleasure. Bactiguard is a Swedish medical device company active across the globe in many different markets with a mission of preventing infections in healthcare environments. That's entirely what we do. We focus on protecting the patients, keeping them safe from infections, and ultimately saving their lives. And this is something that has become increasingly important during the pandemic. What we've seen when there's no vaccine, there's no effective cure for the disease, what can you rely on? You can rely on effective prevention. So providing effective prevention, which is both safe and efficient, is something that we are very proud of. And during this pandemic, it's also become increasingly clear that the silent tsunami that resides in the background at the moment, which is antimicrobial resistance, poses an even greater threat to mankind than this viral pandemic does. And that will stay once we have effective vaccine that reach the population going forward. So that is what we will focus on. And I have a background in the automotive industry. In the automotive industry, there's a zero vision for road traffic accidents and deaths. We've heard about it in the panel this morning, that is being exported also to India and adopted there. And I can't see any reason why we shouldn't have a similar vision for the healthcare sector. They've been very successful in traffic in this country, haven't brought the deaths down to zero, but to 200 or 300, which is a great achievement. And if we collaborate together, I'm sure that we can make great strides in the area of fighting infections in the healthcare environment. We've taken some initial steps. We did that during the celebration of the 10th anniversary of the MOU. We've gathered a few companies. We've gathered the academia through Karolinska and the Karolinska Hospital. We are reaching out to Indian hospitals, and we are inviting more companies and hospitals to join, because I think raising awareness, sharing knowledge, engaging in training, and setting new standards of care will be key to building a sustainable healthcare sector going forward.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. We will invite our fourth panelist, Pavan Asalapuram from EMPE Diagnostics, to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about how this has affected him and his company. Unmute, I think. Still can't hear you, Pavan.
Can you hear me now?
Now we hear you. Great.
Great. Basically, I'm a pharmacist, but I trained and also I got a degree in hospital management. Then I completed my PhD in clinical biotechnology. I came to Sweden 10 years back, and I worked in fantastic universities and national research consortiums called Science for Life Laboratory. During this past 10 years, I have learned a lot from Sweden, which I wanted to bring a change that I learned from the Indian healthcare system. So eventually, we ended up establishing 5 companies in Sweden and India. And we are working on developing rapid and efficient diagnostics that are user-friendly and also that can provide the confirmatory clinical results already in the first clinical visit, that is in less than 2 to 3 hours. That's our passion. That's our focus. And our motto is to end the tuberculosis pandemic, which is one of the most common as well as most dangerous disease that is killing 4,000 people per day. As Cecilia said, this is also one of the main causes as well as sustainable resource for the antimicrobial resistance in the society. And also, thank you, Swecare, for inviting us and also putting us in 2 years in the past 10 years of significant achievements that was portrayed during the visit of His Excellency Swedish King and the Prime Minister of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavan. Maybe I could continue with you since we have you on screen. Could you briefly just elaborate a little bit on what effects the pandemic actually has had? Is it possible to do business for you in India at the moment, for example? And how is the hospital, the healthcare sector looking at this?
Yeah, I would say the pandemic has created both advantages and disadvantages. So one of the disadvantages, what I can say, is that many of our clinical activities has been stalled because we have a subsidiary in India, and our team wanted to visit us in Sweden for the training in March, but they could not come even until now. And also, we had to initiate the clinical validation. It has been stalled since March because most of the tuberculosis laboratories has been converted into the COVID laboratories. However, there are many things that this COVID pandemic has brought into. First of all, it has created an awareness about the rapid diagnostics, especially molecular diagnostics. People didn't know about the PCR or RT-PCR, but now everybody knows about RT-PCR. So there's a big change. It's a big drastic improvement in the knowledge. And the second thing, we heard about the Nobel Prize, but this time we could physically see an immediate use of this Nobel Prize winning technology, CRISPR. They have developed a very unique and intuitive test that can detect COVID within 5 to 10 minutes. And secondly, it also brought interdisciplinary working together. It united the people, healthcare workers, policymakers, politicians, teachers, cleaners, drivers, name it. Everybody took their responsibility and contributed their work and took an active role to fight this pandemic and stop the disease. So we witnessed a united growth. Third, we also saw a lot of innovative ideas to tackle local problems. It can be simple from identifying a new sanitizing method until developing a vaccine candidate. We have witnessed hundreds of thousands new entrepreneurs born in this COVID pandemic. Like, for example, designing a new face mask, personal protective equipments, mobile applications, screening devices, digital devices, disinfectants, sanitizers, many things that came out. So this basically pushed the innovation to the next level. People are realizing what they can do. And the third, and the fourth one, the mass production and scaling up. So people were really worried about scaling up. How can we do the scaling up? But now locally, internationally, every country has established their own mass production units and scaling up. So this is becoming a very good aspect as well as boost for the local as well as international entrepreneurs and the companies. And the final is the emphasis on repurposing of the drugs as well as new formulations. Many companies, many researchers, many clinicians, they're all contributing together to identify a new biomarkers. And new people are working on identifying the new repurposing of the drugs. A colleague of mine in Delhi, she was also working on developing a new aerosol formulation for treating COVID. So there is I would say that, of course, we all witnessed the disaster that this COVID pandemic has brought. But in the other hand, it also brought many, many good things that made us to realize our own potential, that we can contribute to the society and improvement of the society. That's what I feel.
That's interesting to hear you talking about the advantages and the disadvantages. We hear that from many, actually. Now over to you, Cecilia. How has Bactiguard responded and how have you been affected? Can you tell us a little bit? And maybe also, what do you see in the future? Do you think, as we've heard here, that it might be even a bigger focus on the healthcare systems, for example, from government? So it could be opportunities coming out of this pandemic, actually?
Yes, I think it could. I will agree with Pavan that, or in fact say that the only positive outcome of this pandemic is that it's actually raised the awareness of infections and how lethal they can be, and also the awareness of how important prevention is. Because in a minute, when there's a risk to life, we will change behavior. We will stop flying, we will stop seeing friends, we will greet each other with the elbow, and we will meet digitally instead of physically. So that, I believe, is here to stay after the pandemic resides. What we've also seen is that patients have been afraid of seeking healthcare. The number of eligible surgeries has gone down dramatically. In the US by 60 to 80% during the summer months. Here in this region about 50%. And at the same time about 20% fewer cancer patients have been diagnosed. And that doesn't mean that we become any healthier. It means that we are afraid of seeking care. So what is happening is that the usage of consumables in the hospital environment is going down because of the number of treated patients that is going down when everybody's focusing on COVID patients. But what is also happening is that we're pushing a massive healthcare backlog ahead of us that we need to deal with. And the public finances are under pressure as well. So I think over time, this will lead to innovation. It sounds very gloomy, but I think it will lead to innovation. We will push more healthcare into the home. Things like dialysis, etc., will have to be taken care of in the home instead of in the hospital environment. My neighbor had a diagnostic test delivered by a taxi and handed it back, so things can be done remotely, etc., etc. So that is also driving the need for telemedicine. So we will get treatment via a digital channel. And here, infection prevention plays a major role, because if we can reduce the time a patient spends in hospital after being treated, we can reduce the backlog and we can speed up the cycle. So I think from that, there will be innovation. And what we've seen from the governments is that they've opened up fast tracks for COVID-19 related procurement. It's happened in the US, it's happened in Canada, it's happened in the UK, and it's now happening in India. To take one example, the GEM portal, which is an online portal where you can register your products so that it becomes available to the public health sector, and we can reach out much quicker than we would be able to do otherwise.
That's interesting. Well, time flies. We had 30 minutes and we're almost up here. I would just like to invite Amrit to comment and maybe say a few words from the angle of this innovation center that you run. Please, Amrit.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maria. the Business Sweden as the Swedish Trade Commissioner's Office with AIIMS Delhi and Jodhpur as key partners have developed the India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center. I think this is a very interesting vehicle under the MOU of Health to kind of use innovation to drive growth of Swedish organizations and Indian organizations in the country within healthcare. I think definitely, I think when we speak about innovation, I think what would be important is while we spoke about products and solutions, I think what companies will have to maybe keep in mind as they go ahead and they kind of see these new trends play out is how do you work beyond that? How do you work with these new business models? For example, the GEM thing that Cecilia spoke about, how do you really adapt to that? How do you work with creating and supporting processes and protocols and innovation in that? How do you work with upskilling that will be very much needed as part of this innovation journey? We at the Innovation Center have created...
We lost connection with Amrit there, unfortunately. And unfortunately, our time is almost up. I would have liked Niclas to conclude this interesting discussion, but I am sorry to say that I think we need to end here. But I would like to thank all of you who have participated. It's been an interesting discussion. I think it shows that there are so much going on and a lot of positive things actually coming out of this horrific pandemic as well. And let's continue to work with that. Let's continue to strengthen our healthcare system with our innovations, and possibly India and Sweden be able to provide better, more efficient healthcare for our citizens in the future. Thank you listening and watching also, all of you. Thank you.
Insightful, and thank you, panelists, for stepping in. I do want to apologize for the technical hitch we had earlier, and especially to Mr. Leif Johansson and Shampa Bari. Now I would like to basically invite one of the most important conversations today between Shampa Bari, board member, Sweden-India Business Council, and director at Innovation Ecosystem at Ericsson One, with Mr. Leif Johansson, chairman of Astrazeneca and member of the Indian-Sweden Business Leaders Roundtable. Over to you, Shampa.
Good afternoon. My name is Shampa, and thank you, Sanju, for the warm introduction. I am a proud member of the SIBC board. Today, I have the honor of interviewing a legend of Swedish industry and a man who needs no introduction. So I am going to jump into the questions given our limited time and open with the first one. I hope you do not mind. So Leif, during your long career, did you expect to face a global pandemic, and how did the leadership take immediate action? Thank you.
Well, I think you can say that as a pharmaceutical company, we were not unaware that there could be a pandemic of this sort, but I think it actually came with a surprise, both in the terms of the speed that it went across the world, and then also, of course, the fact that it went such a global way. And on top of that, a fairly tricky virus to deal with. So that is a level of surprise, I think. The good thing, I think, has been that the industry, AstraZeneca, but also other pharmaceutical companies, vaccine producers, have reacted with great speed to be able to create a vaccine. And obviously, we have a good vaccine industry in India. And I think that proves that we can actually work much, much quicker when we really set our minds to it. And when we get academia, commercial companies, industrial companies, and the government together. And I think that's a lesson for the future. And in our case, that has meant that we have released the first batch of top-level results from the clinical trials that are needed for regulatory approvals. And we will be able to produce, provided we get approved, about 3 billion doses of vaccine, including help from the Serum Institute of India during 2021. So it proves speed is achievable. We can do things that we used not to be able to do. And we have to be planning for these types of events also for the future.
Could I ask you, as a global company, how did you mobilize this? How did you enable the speed, given the fact that travel was restricted and so much shut down? So how did you respond internally as a company?
Well, I think the good news, I think, is when you have a pandemic like this, there is no problem at all with motivation. And we have really been through our own organization, but also with Oxford and with the government, an absolutely fantastic level of engagement and energy to be able to do something good. So no problem there at all. I think the real issue has been almost intellectual and academic, that we wanted to really make sure that we knew exactly what we were doing. Astrazeneca is not, before this, a great manufacturer of vaccines. We needed to find ways to really do this well together with Oxford University and, of course, their expertise. Motivation, no problem at all. Energy, no problem at all. Lots of hard work. And then we have had to do our daytime jobs also.
No, I can attest to that after having worked with your colleagues for the last 3-4 years. They do deliver over and beyond. So glad to hear that they weren't affected too badly by the pandemic. So large companies are usually not the quickest. You talk about speed a lot, but they're not the quickest innovators. But now the incubators, accelerator programs are being created internally. Would you share a little bit about AstraZeneca's program regarding how you involve the startup sector?
Absolutely, and it's good to be back in India, because I spoke about this last time I was in India too. I think we as a large company have realized that we can be quicker than what we used to be. And one of the ways to become quicker than what we used to be is to open up towards the external world in a much different way than what we used to do. And in our case, that has meant opening up to academic research, academic partnership. It has meant opening up to small and medium-sized companies. And I think the best way to really look at that would be to say that we have realized that to be a successful large pharmaceutical company, over time, you need to have a symbiotic relationship both with academia and small and medium-sized companies. And if you can achieve that in an open and collegial, professional, but still way different to what used to be, then we have an opportunity together to be quite quick. Because large companies typically have big marketing, geographic resources, testing resources, clinical research, clinical development. Small and medium-sized companies usually don't have that, but they have also very good ideas. And those, together with the large companies' good ideas, can truly become competitive in that sense. So that's a dramatic change that we have done. Last time I was in India, we talked about the Swedish Indian Innovation Hub and the challenge there, where we are actively looking for very good Indian entrepreneurs, startups to be able to connect with. There is a challenge there, so we will soon be presenting the winners from that. And I'm very enthusiastic when I see how we can do this also in the context of, for example, Sweden and India coming together.
I think Amrit Hinduja also mentioned this Sweden-India Innovation Healthcare Center. Could you speak a little bit more? You mentioned the challenge, but can you speak a little bit more about how this came about and how you initiated this triple helix type of a cooperation?
I think it came about with our experience that we as a company could do much better in the interface with the small and medium-sized companies, and also together with academia, which is often the place in our industry for where startups actually start. When we took upon ourselves to do that in many countries, Sweden including, but also in other parts of the world, and then we came, and then I was visiting India, and our people were visiting India. We understood, and I knew that from my days at Ericsson, with the startup community, there is a really good young generation entrepreneurial startups in India that we were very impressed with. And then simply we said, why not make this hub of innovative healthcare, a real work between Sweden and India. That's what we did. Quick and effective, but also very stimulating.
I'm very excited about it because this is definitely something that I think is going to really launch us into what we need to solve these global challenges in the future. On December 4th last year at the India-Sweden Business Leaders Roundtable, you talked about the importance of big data, cloud computing, and AI, a lot of the things we work with at Ericsson as well. How did it revolutionize the industry? And does that mean that in the near future, we could maybe see some of this medication being developed much more quickly?
Absolutely. I think we live in very exciting times, and the new normal is not going to go back to the old normal. I think one of the great things that has happened over the last 9 months is that we have learned tremendously how to communicate over the internet, how to be able to tie that into a global context. In the case of our industry, pharmaceutical industry, you can say it will stretch digitalization, 5G connectivity, cloud computing, ability to do cloud storage. All of that will take us into new medicine in the research side. We will be able to find out of data, we will be able to find new medicines. That's already happening in some areas like cardiovascular area. Then I think over time we will see a lot to do with changing the whole paradigm around treatments. We will have monitoring from a digital point of view. We will have a lot of interaction with patients such that we can deliver patient-centric healthcare much, much better, and most of the time outside of hospitals at a much better and lower cost. So all of that speaks tremendously for a fantastic new normal.
I want to leave you in the last 30 seconds we have with the last word in what you're looking forward to most in 2021.
Frankly, I am looking forward to a little physical travel. I've not traveled as little as I have this year since 1977. I would love to come in India and visit. And I think that's a good way to see it. We will be able to pick up what we used to know very well and do that well, but we will also be intrigued, stimulated, and energized by all the new technology. I think the real good thing is going to be digitalization in the healthcare sector.
Thank you so much, Leif, for your time. And this was a very interesting conversation. I wish we had more time, but for now, back to the main panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was an honor.